Believe it or not, Elvis Presley's natural hair color wasn't jet black. He actually cited specific black musicians as his heroes and influences, contrary to popular belief. And the idea he died on the toilet. That specific detail isn't quite what happened. Get ready, because the king of rock and roll is surrounded by legends, and we're about to shake, rattle, and roll through 10 of the biggest myths about him. Number 10. The U.S. Army drafted Elvis just to sabotage his career. You might have heard the whispers, the conspiracy theories, suggesting that Uncle Sam deliberately drafted Elvis Presley at the absolute peak of his initial fame in 1958 to cool down the hysteria, to derail the rebellious rock and roll movement. It sounds like a plot from one of his own movies, right? The idea is that the establishment, uncomfortable with his swiveling hips and the cultural shifts he represented, saw military service as the perfect way to sideline him, hoping his fans would move on while he was away serving in Germany. It feeds into a narrative of the conservative 1950s trying to suppress a cultural phenomenon. But here's the reality check. Elvis was treated, at least officially, like any other young American man eligible for the draft under the Selective Service system. He received his draft notice in December 1957. Yes, the timing was dramatic, coming just as his career was exploding globally. However, there is no concrete evidence pointing to a specific government conspiracy targeting him personally. He could have potentially opted for special services, which would have allowed him to entertain troops and live in relative comfort, essentially continuing his career in uniform. Many celebrities had done this. Colonel Parker, his manager, and Elvis himself made the crucial decision for him to serve as a regular soldier, a GI. They believed this move would improve his public image, showing him as a patriotic American doing his duty, potentially broadening his appeal beyond teenagers to an older, more conservative audience. It was seen as a calculated PR humpathe, not a forced silencing. While some officials might have privately breathed a sigh of relief at his temporary departure from the pop charts, the decision to serve as a regular soldier, and the way his service unfolded, was largely shaped by Elvis and his management aiming for long-term career benefits and respectability, rather than a shadowy government plot to end rock and roll. His draft was part of a standard process affecting millions, even if his fame made it uniquely public. Number 9. Elvis constantly shot out his television sets in fits of rage. Picture this: Elvis, clad in a jumpsuit, maybe munching on a fried sandwich, sees someone on TV he doesn't like. Perhaps fellow singer Robert Goulet, as the popular version of the story often goes, and BAM. He whips out a pistol and blasts the screen to smithereens. It's an image that perfectly captures the myth of the excessive, impulsive, and slightly unhinged rock star, living in his own Graceland bubble. Tales abound of multiple televisions meeting their demise at Elvis's hand, becoming symbols of his frustration, boredom, or displeasure with whatever happened to be flickering across the screen. It paints him as volatile, unable to control his temper, using firearms as casually as one might use a remote control. Okay, let's tune into the facts. Did Elvis Presley shoot a television? Yes, the evidence and accounts from those close to him confirm that it did happen. Members of his inner circle, the Memphis Mafia, recounted incidents where he shot at TV sets. The most frequently cited story does involve Robert Goulet, appearing on screen, apparently triggering Elvis's ire for reasons that remain somewhat unclear, perhaps professional jealousy, perhaps simple annoyance. However, the key difference between the myth and reality lies in the frequency and motivation. It wasn't a constant, everyday occurrence, driven purely by uncontrollable rage, as the myth suggests. These incidents were sporadic, often fueled more by a sense of playful mischief, boredom, or showing off for his friends than by genuine violent anger. Think of it less as a terrifying outburst and more as an incredibly excessive act by someone with too much money, too many guns, and too much time on his hands looking to get a reaction from his entourage. He reportedly found the act itself somewhat amusing afterward. While definitely not normal behavior and indicative of his later isolation and eccentricities, it wasn't the regular rage-fueled destruction spree the legend portrays. He shot a TV, maybe more than one over the years, but it wasn't his standard method for changing the channel. Number 8. Elvis was a natural blonde who dyed his hair jet black. Think of Elvis. What's one of the first things that comes to mind? That iconic, slicked back, jet black hair. The pompadour that launched a million imitators. It's as much a part of his image as the white jumpsuit or the curled lip. The myth often goes that this signature black hair wasn't his natural color at all. People whisper that he was actually a tow-headed kid, a natural blonde, and that the dark look was entirely manufactured for his stage persona, a deliberate choice to appear more rebellious, more mysterious, or perhaps more striking on black and white television. It adds another layer to the idea of Elvis as a carefully constructed icon. Let's comb through the roots of this. Was Elvis a natural blonde? Nope. His natural hair color was actually a light brown or sandy brown, sometimes appearing darker depending on the light. You can see this in photos from his early childhood and teenage years before he hit the big time. He wasn't born with raven locks. So, the part about him dyeing his hair is true. He started darkening his hair around the mid-1950s, reportedly experimenting with shades before settling on the deep black that became his trademark. Why? Several reasons are suggested. One popular theory is that the darker hair simply looked better on camera and film, providing a stronger contrast and definition, especially in the early days of television. Another is that it added to his dramatic, smoldering image, black hair often being associated with a more intense or dangerous look in that era. He reportedly used various products over the years, from regular hair dye to, according to some accounts, even black shoe polish in the very early, lower-budget days to achieve the desired effect. So, while he wasn't a natural blonde, he also wasn't born with that signature, black hair. The truth lies in the middle. He was a natural light to medium brown who chose to dye his hair black for his public image. Number 7. Elvis absolutely hated his movie career and thought all his films were trash. The common narrative paints Elvis Presley's Hollywood years as a frustrating artistic wasteland. After his electrifying early career and his stint in the Army, the story goes, Colonel Tom Parker railroaded him into a relentless string of cheesy, formulaic musical comedies. We hear that Elvis despised these films, feeling they were beneath his talent and a betrayal of his rock and roll roots. He longed for serious dramatic roles, like his heroes Marlon Brando and James Dean, but was stuck churning out fluff like Girl Happy and Clambake. This perception suggests a deeply unhappy artist, trapped in a golden cage, churning out profitable but soul-crushing B movies. Now, let's roll camera on the real picture. Did Elvis become disillusioned with the quality and repetitiveness of many of his later films? Absolutely. Accounts from Elvis himself and those around him confirm his frustration grew over time as the scripts became weaker and the songs became more forgettable, often shoehorned into flimsy plots. He definitely craved more substantial acting challenges and felt the potential he showed in earlier, more dramatic roles was being squandered. However, it's not accurate to say he hated all his movies or the entirety of his film career. He was reportedly quite proud of some of his earlier performances, particularly in films like King Creole, often cited as his personal favorite and his best acting work, Jailhouse Rock and Flaming Star, where he had meteor roles and received positive reviews. He genuinely enjoyed the filmmaking process initially and hoped it would lead to a credible acting career. Even among the later, lighter fare, there were films he seemed to enjoy making more than others, often depending on the location, the co-stars, or specific songs. The issue wasn't acting itself, but the restrictive, profit-driven formula imposed mainly by Colonel Parker, which prioritized quantity over quality and prevented Elvis from pursuing the more serious roles he desired. So while disappointment and frustration were definitely part of his Hollywood experience, especially later on, a blanket statement that he hated all of it simplifies a more complex reality. He saw potential, enjoyed parts of it, but ultimately felt let down by the direction it took. Number 6. Elvis lived solely on fried peanut butter and banana sandwiches. It's probably the most famous quirky detail about Elvis's eating habits, the legendary fried peanut butter and banana sandwich. The myth often expands this into the idea that this was practically all he ate, painting a picture of a man existing on a bizarrely limited and unhealthy diet, particularly in his later years. Sometimes bacon is added to the mix in the telling. This image contributes to the perception of his declining health and eccentric lifestyle, suggesting a diet as excessive and unusual as his fame. It becomes a culinary shorthand for the excesses of his Graceland life. Let's slice into the facts here. Did Elvis love peanut butter and banana sandwiches, often fried in butter? Yes, absolutely. It was genuinely one of his favorite comfort foods, something he enjoyed from his childhood. His cook, Mary Jenkins Langston, prepared them for him frequently at Graceland. She described the process: slicing a loaf of bread, toasting it slightly, spreading peanut butter on both slices, adding sliced banana, mashing it slightly, and then frying the whole sandwich in butter until golden brown. Sometimes, bacon was indeed included, creating the fool's gold loaf, an even more decadent creation involving a hollowed-out loaf of bread, peanut butter, banana, and a pound of bacon, which he famously flew to Denver to eat once. So his fondness for this specific, artery-clogging concoction is well documented. However, the idea that it was the only thing he ate, or even the main staple of his diet, is a huge exaggeration. Elvis had a famously large appetite and enjoyed a wide variety of Southern comfort foods. His diet included things like meatloaf, mashed potatoes, fried chicken, collard greens, burgers, steaks, and biscuits and gravy. While his eating habits, especially later in life, were certainly unhealthy and contributed to his weight gain and health problems, they weren't exclusively limited to that one famous sandwich. The fried peanut butter and banana sandwich was a beloved treat, a signature indulgence, but it wasn't the entirety of his culinary world. It was just the most memorable part of a generally rich, heavy, Southern-style diet. Number 5. Colonel Tom Parker discovered Elvis and was solely responsible for his success. The story often told is that Colonel Tom Parker, the shrewd carnival barker-esque manager, found a raw, unknown Elvis Presley and single-handedly molded him into the king of rock and roll. Parker is portrayed as the mastermind behind every move, the Svengali who controlled Elvis's career, negotiated all the deals, and orchestrated his rise from regional sensation to global superstar. This narrative gives Parker almost all the credit, or blame depending on your perspective, for Elvis's trajectory, suggesting Elvis was merely talented clay shaped by the Colonel's expert hands. Let's untangle this manager-star relationship. Did Colonel Parker play a massive, undeniable role in Elvis Presley's career? Yes, without a doubt. Parker took over as Elvis's manager in 1955, though he was involved slightly earlier, buying out his contract from Sun Records, Sam Phillips, and signing him to the major label RCA Victor. Parker was relentless, a master negotiator and promoter who secured unprecedented deals for Elvis, including lucrative movie contracts, television appearances, like the crucial Ed Sullivan shows, and merchandising rights that were groundbreaking for the time. He understood mass marketing and how to build Elvis into a national brand. However, the idea that he discovered Elvis is incorrect. Elvis was already a rapidly rising regional star when Parker became fully involved. He had recorded his first hits like That's All Right and Blue Moon of Kentucky at Sun Records under Sam Phillips' guidance, and he was already generating significant buzz and drawing huge crowds across the South thanks to his electrifying performances and radio play secured by early supporters like DJ Dewey Phillips. Bob Neal was actually Elvis's manager before Parker took full control. Parker recognized Elvis's unique talent and potential for mass appeal and skillfully amplified it onto a national and international stage. He didn't create the talent, he marketed it brilliantly, and many argue, exploitatively. Elvis's success was a combination of his own revolutionary talent, charisma, and musical instincts, Sam Phillips' initial nurturing at Sun Records, and Colonel Parker's aggressive management and promotion. Parker was a crucial catalyst for his superstardom, but he didn't discover him from scratch, nor was he the sole reason for his success. Elvis was already igniting audiences before the Colonel stepped fully into the picture. Number 4. Elvis couldn't really play the guitar. It was just a prop. You've seen the images. Elvis slinging a guitar, looking cool, using it as part of his iconic stage presence. But a persistent myth suggests that it was mostly for show. Critics and skeptics sometimes claim Elvis wasn't a genuinely skilled guitarist, that he only knew a few basic chords, and that the instrument served primarily as a prop to make him look the part of a rock and roll musician, while the real guitar work was handled by his talented backing musicians like Scotty Moore. The idea is that his musical contribution was limited to his voice and his moves. Okay, let's fret about the facts. Was Elvis Presley a virtuoso guitarist on par with legends like Chuck Berry or Jimi Hendrix? No, he wasn't, and he never claimed to be. His lead guitarist, Scotty Moore, handled the intricate solos and defining riffs that were crucial to the classic Elvis sound. However, the assertion that Elvis couldn't really play, or that the guitar was just a prop, is flat out wrong. Elvis was a capable rhythm guitarist. He used the guitar from the very beginning of his career, not just as a stage accessory, but as a tool for songwriting and accompaniment. He knew a solid repertoire of chords and had a strong sense of rhythm that helped drive the band, especially in the early Sun studio sessions and Leaf performances. Sam Phillips, the founder of Sun Records, often highlighted the importance of Elvis's rhythm guitar playing in creating the unique sound of those early recordings. It provided a percussive, driving foundation. You can hear his acoustic rhythm guitar clearly on many early tracks if you listen closely. He often played it during rehearsals, backstaged, and at home for his own enjoyment. While his stage performances sometimes emphasized showmanship over intricate playing, especially as his fame grew and his bands became larger, his foundational guitar skills were genuine and an integral part of his musical identity. He wasn't a flashy lead player, but he could definitely play, and the guitar was far more than just part of the costume. Number 3. Elvis died on the toilet. It's one of the most widely circulated and often grimly joked about details surrounding Elvis Presley's death, that the king of rock and roll met his end while sitting on the toilet at Graceland. This specific, rather undignified image has become firmly lodged in public consciousness, often repeated as undisputed fact. It adds a layer of bathos to the tragedy of his premature death, reducing the final moments of a cultural icon to a somewhat embarrassing scenario. This detail is frequently mentioned in articles, documentaries, and casual conversation about his passing on August 16, 1977. So, what's the actual sequence of events, according to official reports and eyewitness accounts? Elvis was indeed found unresponsive on the floor of his master bathroom at Graceland by his then-girlfriend, Ginger Alden. He had apparently fallen forward off the toilet. The official cause of death was determined to be cardiac arrhythmia, a severe irregular heartbeat, likely brought on by prescription drug abuse and his generally poor health, including high blood pressure, an enlarged colon, and obesity. While he was in the bathroom and had evidently been using the toilet shortly before collapsing, the specific image of him dying while seated on the toilet isn't quite accurate. He was discovered on the floor, suggesting the fatal event occurred as he stood up, or immediately after. The medical examiner, Dr. Jerry Francisco, initially listed the cause as cardiac arrest, though controversy and questions about the role of prescription drugs swirled immediately and continued for years. Later investigations and disclosures confirmed polypharmacy. The abuse of multiple prescription drugs was a major contributing factor. The key factual correction here is subtle but significant. He was found collapsed on the bathroom floor, having fallen from the toilet, not discovered dead while still seated on it. While the location remains the bathroom, the precise scenario often depicted in the myth is a slight, though widely believed, distortion of the actual discovery. Number 2. Elvis was racist and stole black music without giving credit. This is one of the most serious and persistent accusations leveled against Elvis Presley. The narrative claims that Elvis built his career by appropriating musical styles, songs, and performance elements from black artists without acknowledgement or compensation. Some versions include a widely circulated but unsubstantiated quote attributed to Elvis, supposedly saying, "The only thing Negroes can do for me is buy my records and shine my shoes." This accusation paints Elvis as a cultural thief who benefited from racial segregation, achieving fame with music that black artists originated, but couldn't get mainstream exposure for implying he held racist beliefs himself. Let's examine the historical record. Firstly, the inflammatory quote about shining shoes has never been credibly sourced. Despite extensive searching by journalists and biographers for decades, no verifiable evidence that Elvis ever said this has emerged. People who knew him, both black and white, have consistently denied he ever expressed such sentiments. Prominent black figures who interacted with him generally described him as respectful. Now, regarding the music itself, Elvis undeniably drew heavily from black musical traditions, including blues, R&B, and gospel, as well as white traditions like country and pop. He synthesized these influences into his own unique style. Did he steal it? Music is inherently about influence and interpretation. Elvis frequently and openly credited his influences. He publicly praised black artists like Arthur Big Boy Crudup, who wrote and first recorded That's All Right, Elvis's debut single, Fats Domino, Chuck Berry, Little Richard, Sister Rosetta Tharpe, and B.B. King, calling them pioneers and expressing his admiration. B.B. King himself stated, "Music is owned by the whole universe. It isn't exclusive to the black man or the white man or any other color, Elvis. Number one, he was a fantastic singer. Hearing him that first time, I knew that he had to be black." Many black contemporaries like Jackie Wilson and James Brown acknowledged that Elvis helped open doors for black artists by bringing R&B and blues-influenced music to a wider, white audience in a deeply segregated America, even if the system itself was unfair. He grew up poor in Tupelo, Mississippi, in neighborhoods where he was exposed to black music and culture, attending black churches and absorbing gospel music firsthand. While the system of segregation did unfairly benefit white artists performing black-originated music, attributing personal racism to Elvis based on this systemic issue, especially given his documented statements and the accounts of many black peers, misrepresents the complex his statements. He operated within a segregated system, but often showed respect and gave credit to the black artists who inspired him. Number one, Elvis is still alive and faked his death. This is the ultimate Elvis myth, the one that refuses to die. Decades after his official death, on August 16, 1977, a significant number of people believe Elvis Presley didn't actually die, but instead faked his death to escape the crushing pressures of fame, his declining health, or perhaps even threats from the mafia, a theory fueled by his connection to federal agent activities. Proponents point to alleged sightings all over the world: pumping gas in Michigan, shopping in London, chilling in Argentina. They cite supposed clues like the misspelling of his middle name, Aaron vs. Aaron, on his gravestone, the allegedly waxy appearance of the body in the casket, inconsistencies in the death reports, and the fact he was fascinated with spirituality and escaping his identity. The idea is that the king orchestrated an elaborate disappearance and is living out his days quietly somewhere, perhaps occasionally emerging for a covert burger run. Now, let's look at the evidence for his passing. Elvis Presley's death was officially confirmed by medical examiners. His funeral was a major public event, attended by family, friends, and dignitaries, and intensely covered by global media. There are official death certificates and reports from the Shelby County Medical Examiner's Office in Memphis, Tennessee. While controversies and questions surrounding the exact cause of death and the role of prescription drugs lingered and led to subsequent investigations, like the Tennessee Board of Medical Examiners' investigation into Dr. George Nicholas, none of these questioned the fundamental fact that he died. The arguments used by Elvis' live's proponents are typically based on circumstantial evidence, anomalies easily explained, or outright misinformation. The gravestone, misspelling. Aaron was the middle name Elvis, and his family actually used throughout his life, though official state records might have used Aaron. The family chose the spelling they preferred for his memorial, the waxy look. That's unfortunately common for bodies prepared for open casket viewings after an autopsy and embalming. The sightings, not a single one has ever been substantiated. They remain anecdotal stories, photos of look-alikes or wishful thinking. Wealthy, globally famous individuals faking their deaths and remaining completely hidden for decades, resisting the urge to contact loved ones, is extraordinarily improbable, requiring an almost improbable. While the fantasy of Elvis escaping it all is compelling, fueled by his iconic status and the suddenness of his departure, all credible evidence points to the sad reality that Elvis Presley did indeed pass away in 1977. The myth persists as a testament to his enduring legend and perhaps a collective difficulty in accepting the loss of such a monumental cultural figure.